Speaker of the second session focused on family and relationship is Dr. Suzana Simoes. Suzana holds a degree in physical therapy and she is one of the founders of the Conscious Living Spiritist group in North Miami. She is also a member of the board of directors of the Spiritist Federation of Florida. Dr. Simoes is an active contributor to the dissemination of Spiritism, volunteering as a speaker in the state of Florida and the U.S. This afternoon, her talk is entitled Homosexuality and Family. Please, Dr. Simoes.
Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here and honored to have the hottest topic of the day. To start, I would like to play a video and introduce to you, if you have not yet seen or met, Zach Walls.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Zach Walls. I'm a sixth-generation Iowan and an engineering student at the University of Iowa, and I was raised by two women. My biological mom, Terry, told her grandparents that she was pregnant, that the artificial insemination had worked, and they wouldn't even acknowledge it. It actually wasn't until I was born and they succumbed to my infantile cuteness that they broke down and told her that they were thrilled to have another grandson. Unfortunately, neither of them lived to see her marry her partner, Jackie, of 15 years when they wed in 2009. My younger sister and only sibling was born in 1994. We actually have the same anonymous donor, so we're full siblings, which is really cool for me. And I guess the point is that our family really isn't so different from any other Iowa family. When I'm home, we go to church together, we eat dinner, we go on vacations. But we have our hard times too. We get in fights. Actually, my mom, Terry, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2000. It is a devastating disease that put her in a wheelchair, so we've had our struggles. But, we're Iowans. We don't expect anyone to solve our problems for us. We'll fight our own battles. We just hope for equal and fair treatment from our government. Being a student at the University of Iowa, the topic of same-sex marriage comes up quite frequently in classroom discussions. And the question always comes down to, well, can gays even raise kids? And the question, the conversation gets quiet for a moment because most people don't really have an answer. And then I raise my hand and say, actually, I was raised by a gay couple, and I'm doing pretty well. I scored in the 99th percentile on the ACT. I'm actually an Eagle Scout. I own and operate my own small business. If I was your son, Mr. Chairman, I believe I'd make you very proud. I'm not really so different from any of your children. My family really isn't so different from yours. After all, your family doesn't derive its sense of worth from being told by the state, you're married, congratulations. No. The sense of family comes from the commitment we make to each other, to work through the hard times so we can enjoy the good ones. It comes from the love that binds us. That's what makes a family. So what you're voting here isn't to change us. It's not to change our families. It's to change how the law views us, how the law treats us. You are voting for the first time in the history of our state to codify discrimination into our Constitution, a Constitution that, but for the proposed amendment, is the least amended Constitution in the United States of America. You are telling Iowans that some among you are second-class citizens who do not have the right to marry the person you love. So will this vote affect my family? Would it affect yours? Over the next 2 hours, I'm sure we're going to hear plenty of testimony about how damaging having gay parents is on kids. But in my 19 years, not once have I ever been confronted by an individual who realized independently that I was raised by a gay couple. And you know why? Because the sexual orientation of my parents has had zero effect on the content of my character. Thank you very much.
Homosexuality, marriage between gays, adoption by gays, the constitution of family by gays is a topic that's gaining more and more visibility in our society, and it's something that comes to challenge many times the normative values that the same society has established. As I speak today, this afternoon, I want to make a difference between normative values and natural values. When I speak about natural values, I will be speaking about the values of the natural law, of the divine law. And normal values are the values that we as society have decided and have established to be normal. Before addressing some of the issues that Zach Walls brings on this video that was watched by more than 2 million people on the internet, I would like to bring some basic concepts in Spiritism, especially if you're new to it, and so we can set the base for us to address those issues. We are spirits. It seems silly, after all that we've heard so far, to remind us that we are spirits, that we're immortal spirits. But the reality is that every day we get up, and even though we know that, our actions, our thoughts, and our behaviors do not reflect this knowledge. So it's important. I try to remind myself as I go through my day that I am actually an immortal spirit, and try to think of what are the consequences and implications of being such. We're mortal spirits. We're in a journey of enlightenment. And we learn in the Spirit's book that the spirits do not have sex, not as we understand it. And so the question is, how do we understand sex? And our understanding of sex is very much tied to how it is expressed in our physical bodies, very much tied to the idea of gender, male and female. But the physical body does not define us in essence, right? It will come to an end. In the same way that even my name, who I think I am, Suzana, really does not speak to who I am in essence, because I am also John, I am also Catherine. Who knows how many names have I had in the course of my evolution. So the physical gender does not define and does not express sex as it understood by the spirits. Now, let's talk about sexual energy. But before talking about sexual energy, let me talk about the most, and this is perhaps the most important part of my presentation, I think. There are two main forces in the universe. The most important and absolute force that reigns in the universe is the force of love. Love has created each one of us, and love is the source where we come from, and love is also the reason why we have been created, and it is also the aim of our lives. There is one purpose in our lives, and the purpose is for each one of us to love, to learn to love one another as brothers and sisters that we are under God. That's it. That's the reason why we're created. So we're all here undergoing several incarnations with this purpose, the purpose to learn to love. This is truly, truly the only thing that matters in this entire universe. God expects that one day we'll be able to manifest in ourselves, in our thoughts, in our actions, in our feelings, unconditional love for one another. And then there is a second force, a very important force in the universe, which is sexual energy. Sexual energy is a force of creation, is a force of action. It's the force that creates the planets, the galaxies. It's a force of creation that happens when we create a physical form. It's the force of creation that I use when I am at work, building, helping, assisting others. It's the force that is used in arts, in music, in all the expressions of life. So it's a force of action. And reincarnation. Reincarnation is the steps, is the phases that we have to undergo in order to achieve enlightenment. So in order to achieve enlightenment, we come back, we return many times. And as we return to the physical realm, at times we'll take a body that is of the female gender, and then at other times we'll take a male body with the purpose of allowing the spirit to experiencing both genders also develop the masculinity and the femininity, the potentialities that we have inside ourselves, and integrate this potentialities. So each gender is going to give us a number of experiences, and it's important for the enlightenment process that we experience both genders through reincarnation. Emmanuel, in the book Life and Sex, and also Jorge Andrea, in the book that's not yet translated, Sexual Forces of the Soul, they speak about this phenomena called psychic bisexuality. And what is it? We all bring in ourselves, in the core, in the spirit, in our ancestors or unconscious, whatever you want to call it, the potentialities for masculinity and for femininity. It's in us. We have both potentialities. When we go to the process of reincarnation, each one of us has masculinity and femininity in itself. If you had more lives in the male gender, the proportion is going to be that you will be expressing more of the male characteristics. And so these characteristics, this experience, the sum of experience that you have had in the male gender are going to express as you go to one incarnation to another, and even in the spiritual realm, your likes and your tendencies. Now, when we talk about evolution, this is from the book, again, that I already cited, the book of Jorge Andrea, Sexual Forces of the Soul. He talks about the evolution of the sexual energy. And what he explains to us is this, is that in the very beginning of our evolution, our sexual energy is going to express itself in more absolute ways. So we're going to be either more towards the end of masculinity or more towards the end of femininity. And what happens as we evolve? We move over here to the central zone. So each one of us right now will be expressing again in the more peripheral or conscious areas of our being the sum of our experiences through the reincarnatory process. What happens to the more evolved spirits? The more evolved spirits, they no longer manifesting their sexuality through the most peripheral areas of the being, but the sexuality is manifested from the core, from the spirit itself. And this sexuality no longer has identification with gender. It's a sexuality where both masculinity and femininity has been fully developed and has been fully integrated. So these spirits are able to manifest this energy with the full integration of both polarities. And again, they no longer identify with either gender. So this is the evolution of the sexual energy as we undergo the process of reincarnation. This is what's going to happen to each one of us. Okay, it's only 35 minutes, so I cannot go much deeper into this. And I'm going to move forward to possible spiritual scenarios for sexuality. Now, those are usually presented as possible spiritual scenarios for homosexuality. But I'm going to tell you that the reasons why someone might be homosexual are the same ones that someone might be heterosexual. And I also think that, and this is me, and that one day we're going to look back at this whole discussion and me being here talking about homosexuality, and we're going to think that how silly that was, how pointless, you know? Because the same way that we don't question why we are heterosexual, I am sure that one day we're not going to be wasting time thinking why we're homosexual. We're going to have better things to do. But in any case, so the possible spiritual scenarios for sexuality, let's look at them. Natural consequence of emotional echoes of many past lives in one gender. Condition that facilitates the accomplishment of one's mission. Trial and expiation due to abuse of genetic faculties and other people's feelings, and condition derived from the present, such as educational process, traumas, and culture. It's a very complex there's so many different reasons, and we can't talk about all of them. So we're going to focus on 2 reasons that speak to reasons that are related to the reincarnatory process and previous experience acquired by the spirit. So the first one, natural consequence of emotional echoes of many past lives in one gender. So in the Spiritist magazine, we're going to find the following. It could be the case that a spirit incarnates a number of times under the same gender, which is something that could lead to keeping either the male or female characteristics whose mark it still holds in either state, spiritual or incarnate state. It is only at a certain level of progress and dematerialization that the influence of physical matter is completely eliminated along with gender ideation. Therefore, even if the spirit experiments a different gender in a new life, it could still keep the inheriting likes, tendencies, and nature of the gender it had before. This is in Allan Kardec, Revista Espírita, 1861 is the first volume. Now, another cause, and the one that's most talked about everywhere, including the Spiritist Center, is trial and expiations due to abuse of genetic faculties and other people's feelings. It's easy to understand why. Let's look at our society today. And let's think for 1 second how well are we doing with our sexual energies and with our impulses and with our sexuality. I mean, all of us, homosexuals, heterosexuals, any type of sexual, right? We are struggling, and this is pretty evident. So naturally, many of us do engage in behaviors that become very hurtful for the person in first place, many times for the family, many times for other families, disrespecting people's feelings. And the spirit might very well, after gaining consciousness and taking responsibility of its actions, ask to reincarnate in the condition of homosexuality. Very well. So what are the challenges that this spirit is going to face? Incarnate in a gender to learn to value that same gender. The challenge of being a minority. The challenge of living in societies where homosexuality is seen and understood as a disease. And even if you are in this country, for instance, where it's been established a long time ago that homosexuality is not a disease, this idea and this feeling is so much ingrained in us that whether we're talking about society or even in the Spiritist Center, people are seeing in that way, people are oriented from this perspective. Let me put this something for you. Just the fact that we're discussing homosexuality means that our main assumption is heterosexuality is the norm. Because if it wasn't for this, we wouldn't be even discussing it. But we are here talking about this because our beginning point is that heterosexuality is the norm. And that's why we're discussing homosexuality. And when we address our brothers and sisters that find themselves in this situation, this is where we are coming from usually. The challenge of self-acceptance and self-love. Kirsten was talking about, she showed the pyramid. I think one of the greatest challenges that we all face is this challenge of low self-esteem, right? Why? Because none of us truly and deeply identify as a child of God yet. And from this no-identification, we all suffer from low self-esteem. Just below low self-esteem, there was love and belonging. Love and belonging. Let me tell you something about belonging. Belonging is everything. It's everything. So when you're trying to love yourself, when you're trying to build an identity, and the society entirely around you is telling you that there is something wrong with you and you don't belong to this society, the challenge is much greater. is much more difficult. It is difficult for each one of us to build our identity of children of God. But then when you have, again, a society that tells you that, look, you're not normal, but Spiritism has hope for you, you know? It's not a sin. You're just deeply, deeply in trouble. And that makes me feel so good, right? Okay, so building self-esteem and building identity when you are going against, you know, the majority of the people, if they're not telling, their actions many times tells you that you are, like Zach Walls says, a second-class citizen. Fight for the natural rights such as freedom to love and family. Things that most of us take for granted. And then you have to fight for the right to constitute a family, for the right to openly love the person who you love. So the challenge is the challenge of inner work. Well, it's everybody's challenge, right? We're all doing in this journey to do our inner work. But so, these are some of the challenges. And the question is, what do we do? How do we go about this? Okay, so let's say that the person who is undergoing the experience of homosexuality is indeed a sinner. How are we going to save this person, right? We need to give this person tools for education. And the tools have been talked about the entire day today. What are they? Marriage. If you were married, you know what I'm going to be talking about. It's difficult. It's difficult. Past the honeymoon, long-term commitment, it's complicated, right? But it is one of the most precious tools for enlightenment, because marriage gives us opportunity to love beyond our egos, to find, if you can stick to it long-term, to find a love that does not identify with ego anymore, a love that's profound, a love that's divine. That's what marriage does to each one of us. And so, sorry. Let me find. Emmanuel was asked, is it allowed for two same-gender persons to live under the same roof as husband and wife? And his answer was, in response to this question, the encoder of the Spiritist doctrine has added question 695 in the Spirit's book that reads, is marriage, that is to say, the permanent union of two beings, contrary to the law of nature? It is a progress arrived by human race. Our incarnate friends in the physical realm, with the task of maintaining and looking after the Spiritist doctrine, are able to study and make conclusions from the above text. So marriage is a progress. It's a progress. Because marriage means that, you know, we are married, someone comes into our life, we feel that attraction, and we have a sense of responsibility, and we say, I'm going to commit to this person and stick to that person, because this is going to happen in our lives, in all our lives. So it's a progress that has moved us from polygamy to monogamy. And it's a progress for all of us who are willing to experience the benefits of marriage. Adoption. It was said here before as well. The body proceeds from the bodies in the gospel according to Spiritism, but the spirit does not proceed from the spirit. When we are thinking about marriage and family, we need to start thinking about these issues under the light of the immortal spirit. And under the light of the immortal spirit means that we don't belong to each other. So when someone decides to look at a child and say, it didn't come from me, I didn't generate this body, but this is a spirit who needs to be educated, and I am going to open my house and give up on my time and make the sacrifice to educate another soul. And then I'm going to return it to God, because that's who we truly belong to. So adoption is an act of unconditional love. Unconditional love for another human creature is an incredible exercise of love. And then we have family, the constitution of family. And what do we know about family? Much has been said already about family. One day, I want to see on John's presentation, when he put a picture of a family there, a picture of a gay family. Okay? All right. So, and I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. Family. Family is a sacred institution creating a space where spirits with past commitments can meet again to develop on earth the constructive task of real brotherhood. This was said by Emmanuel. So we know that. So family is a space where you have spirits who come together again. It's not a random action. We saw that. So spirits are brought together so they can do what? They can again learn to love one another. So whether we are talking about marriage, whether we are talking about adoption, whether we are talking about the constitution of family, we're talking about divine tools that God gives us, all of us, gives humanity to do what? These are spaces, these are labs for the education of the soul. All of us. All of us. So we can learn the ultimate goal of our existence, which is to love one another unconditionally as brothers and sisters. It doesn't matter what your family looks like. Honestly, I don't think that God is really worried about it, but God wants to know if you are loving your kid, if you can commit to your partner. God wants to know if you can love unconditionally, if you can sacrifice. I think that this is really what God is worried about, and I think this is what we are here to do and to accomplish. Did you find me over there? Okay. And so one of the things is that diversity is extremely threatening. Many people believe that the constitution of families by gays is a threat to the traditional idea of family and marriage. And they think that because they don't know, like we know, about the immortal spirit. And they think that because they're afraid. And they think that because they are manifesting really deep prejudice. Because diversity, if anything else, makes life more interesting and gives us more tools for enlightenment. And so the homosexual family will not threaten the heterosexual family. On the contrary, will add to society. And this is an interesting quote that comes from this book by Scott Page, where he's talking about group decision making. And he says that it's best when the group reflects unique perspectives and ways of thinking. The key lies in bringing together individuals with different backgrounds and life experiences. The result will be a messy process at first, for sure, but one which outperforms groups of like-minded individuals chosen on the basis of extensive experience and high IQ. So, if you have a group of people who think exactly alike, even if they're very intelligent and experts, and you have a group with a diversity of perspectives, perhaps that group is going to be a little bit more work at first, but their experience is going to be so rich that's going, as he says, to outperform the groups that everybody thinks alike. So we should not fear diversity, in the Spiritist movement included. If we're open to learn with one another, if we're open to get our different points of view and put together harmoniously for the higher cause that guides all of us. Let me bring a little bit of research and also I will add a little bit of my personal experience, because this is not something that you'll find in books, not at least not at this point. So I'm going to cite this book because it's an excellent book that brings together the outcome of many research studies. So I mentioned long-term relationships, right? And I mentioned how difficult they are if you're married. Again, you know what I'm saying. But when you are in a homosexual marriage, to the normal challenges of just being married, you have other challenges. If your partner is sick, you may not be able to get a visitation to the hospital. You don't get the economical advantages that married couples get in this country. And I'm going to tell you, the money is a tough issue on marriages many times. So gay couples, many times, they want to be married, and they are facing a number of adversities that many heterosexual couples have no idea what it is about. So the research shows that these long-term relationships show notable strength and endurance. Also, the family will face very unique challenges. So, for instance, sometimes when you have a kid, the kid, because the spirit's going to show more affinity to one parent than the other. This happens because these are relationships that have been formed in the past. Now, in the state of Florida, not too long ago, homosexuals could not adopt couples. So, for instance, when I adopt my kids, I did a single-parent adoption. If the kid shows more affection for the parent who is the legal parent, the other parent has the stress of feeling, and I'm not even the parent. So that becomes an extra problem. And then when you have to take your kids to the doctor, you have to explain to them that the other person is also a parent, even though he or she is not legally recognized by our system. So there are many challenges that these families will face. But interestingly, the research shows that on the good side of things, the division of work on the homosexual families is more equal. And I'm glad to have a wife. There is more freedom of roles. The kids, even though they might face some of the challenges with bullying and teasing, they do show good mental health. Contrary than what was thought, being raised by a gay couple has no effect on the sexual orientation of the kid. Heterosexual families, homosexual families will have the same number of homosexual kids. And these kids are going to grow up with more flexible notions of gender. What do I mean by that? My son, well, he's the only male in the house. And he decided, he's looking at my daughter, you know, painting her nails and playing with nail polish, and he started to, you know, wanting to do the same. Many of us would freak out. How come a boy is doing that? No, 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 this is for girls. I even said that. Because we have our own internalized homophobia. We have our own, you know, we were raised in a society where, you know, we were taught girls do this and boys do that, right? And so my partner's like, why are you saying that? I'm like, I don't know. So I said to him, okay, go ahead and do your nails. But why is it so complicated? Because we feel threatened. Boys should not do that. What does that mean exactly? What does that mean exactly? That he's going to be gay because he's doing his nails? No. But what if he becomes gay? Right? And so, but these are the challenges that we face. So I told him, okay, go ahead and do that. You look pretty. Look how cool your hand is, right? But then you also have to protect your kid. Because when he goes to school, not everybody's going to think this way. And so you have to say, this is okay, but look, sometimes people will not understand that. Time done. People will not understand that. So those are some of the challenges, and I have many stories. If you ever want to hear, I'll sit with you and tell you. But as I come to the end here, I want to end my presentation taking advantage of the political moment that we are undergoing and inviting you to do this with me. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. I think it's about time for us to leave behind and leave in the past these ideas of sin, these ideas of normal and not normal. Emmanuel in Life and Sex says clearly at the end of the book that what we think is normal is not quite normal, and the ideas of normality are going to change and evolve. So no one can really say what's normal and what's not normal. So let's move forward. And I invite you to think about the experience of homosexuality as a blessing. Because it is. Because it gives you so many tools and so much material to work. Just like anything else, every single experience that we have in this planet, every single circumstances of our lives becomes a tool of enlightenment if we make good use of it. And so I really would like to leave this invitation that we start to thinking and feeling this experience from a different perspective, from a perspective of a blessing. And I also would like to invite you who are involved in the Spiritist Center to go back to your Spiritist centers. And please, teach your kids, when you're talking about families, that there are other types of families out there so they can learn with a broader view and understanding. Teach them families under the perspective of the immortal spirit, truly. Because our society today, there's so many different types of families. And if you want, call me, email me. I have a number of books in my house that I read to my kids every night. Beautiful, wonderful stories that talk about adoption, that talk about different types of families. And I'm going to tell you one of my favorite stories that I read for my kids before they go to bed. Some of the pictures have my arm over, so I apologize for that, but I didn't have time to fix it. It's called The Family Book. Some families are big. Some families are small. Some families are the same color. Some families are different colors. Some families look alike. Some families look like their pets. Some families have a stepmom or stepdad and stepsisters or stepbrothers. Some families adopt children. Some families have 2 moms and 2 dads. Some families eat the same things. Some families eat different things. Some families like to be noisy. Some families like to be quiet. Some families like to be messy. Some families like to be clean. All families can help each other be strong. There are lots of different ways to be a family. Your family is special, no matter what kind it is. And with this story, I thank you. I would like to mention the outstanding work of Andre Moreira, and I would like to also thank my partner, Sherry Ashcraft, who has been extremely instrumental in broadening my only view and understanding of the issue. Thank you.